Hello, everybody. My name is Miss Andrea, and I am here with Lane Arts Council to do a 4-lesson module on drawing from your life. And when I say drawing from your life, there's a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind. Number one, we have an age group of K through 2, a grade level of K through 2. So there's going to be things that are going to be new for some kids, and for others, it's going to be maybe a reminder of something that's been taught before. But I just encourage that everyone, regardless of whether it's brand new or you've done it before, to just take what I'm teaching and bring it up to the next level. Okay, so that's what I mean by drawing from your life. I also, really important from a creativity aspect, I want to let everybody know that in my world, it's so important to draw from your life and draw from your own personal experience. That means what you are doing as an artist is very, very important. What other people do and comparing yourself to others is really not the point. The point is to be able to express yourself in this visual art form. And the way you do that is you value what you are doing by focusing on that and not comparing it to others. It's always good to look at what other people are doing to get inspiration. And when you also look and study the masters, you learn things that you may not learn if you don't, but your experience is very important, very valid. So I wanted to start off this whole entire module with that in mind. Okay, all right. So we are going to start with, we're going to do some drawing today. And so we need to talk about what materials you will need to do this lesson today. So we're going to have you gather your materials. So you are going to need a piece of paper, and just a sheet of copy paper is fine. And you're going to need a pencil. And it's helpful to give it a quick sharpening before we begin. And you can use the eraser at the end of your pencil. But if you have either of these two eraser types, this is like a nice white gum eraser, which is good because it doesn't leave any like traces on your paper. But you could also use a pink eraser and just erase carefully and wipe off any traces that it leaves. Okay, so once you have those items ready, you also want to have a clean, flat working space here. And something else you want to have, if it's available, is a water bottle. In order for creativity to flow, you want to be able to stay hydrated. So I always work with water next to me just to keep things flowing. Okay, so we are going to start with what we are going to be calling creating a field of view. So field of view is something that refers to the area that the artist is looking at. Right now we have a field of view that is 8.5 by 11, which is your average copy paper size. But what we're going to do is we're going to be creating a field of view with 4 different smaller fields of view. Now, the reason why we're working a little bit smaller is because sometimes it can be very intimidating to draw big. So if you make things small, then there's kind of less pressure. And if you really like what you do, then later, if you have time and the desire, you can take what you've done in a small field of view and increase it to a larger field of view, which means your scale is going to increase. Okay, this is how we're going to be working today. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to set up this field of view. So we're going to practice the art form of folding, very simple folding. So you're going to take your 8.5 by 11, and what I like to do is match the corners up. So you're going to fold it what we call hamburger, where we match up the corners, right? Corner to corner, and then just like a gentle, you could put it down against your clean, flat space and make that nice crease down the middle. All right, so that's folding your paper in half. And now if we fold our paper in half again, we are going to fold it into 4 parts, okay? So in math, we call that the fraction of 1/4 or 1/4, okay? So from one piece of paper, we are going to create 4 different fields of view, okay? 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we are going to work on each one for each drawing activity that we do. So to make it simple and create a field of view that is just focused right here, I'm going to have you put your paper, fold it into that quarter and leave it at that quarter dimension like you see right here, okay? All right, so once you have done that, you're going to need to decide which orientation you're going to use, which orientation you want your drawing to be, okay? So when we look at our paper like this is what we call landscape, okay? Now, if we were to look at a bigger paper, this is what landscape would be. This is when your paper is mostly oriented horizontally, okay? So landscape or horizontal, those go hand in hand. If you were to turn your field of view to be in this orientation, this is what we would call portrait. And portrait is the schematic that's straight up and down, okay? Vertical. So this is portrait, all right? Now, with your quarter page field of view, you're going to decide whether you want it to be landscape or portrait. So go ahead and do that now. As you're doing that and making that decision, we are going to move on to an activity that's drawing repetitive simple shapes, okay? When we draw repetitive simple shapes, it helps us work with things that we already know very well and can basically draw pretty easily. And we're going to take those shapes and make a design with them, all right? So drawing the outside of a shape is called contour, okay? Contour is kind of like a nice vocabulary word to know. And it basically means the outside of something, all right? So the contour of a shape would just be the outside of a shape, okay? So I am going to, let's see. I think I'm going to go with landscape rather than portrait. But whatever you want to do is fine. Okay, so you're going to take your pencil and you want to think of maybe 2 or 3 simple shapes that you like to draw. Okay, so I'm going to show some examples first. I'm going to show you how doing simple shapes can make really cool designs. So first thing we're going to do is look at this. Here you see a variety of triangles. I'm sure everyone on this stream or anyone who joins us later can, see that it's a pretty interesting design, and it's made fairly easily because I'm sure every one of you can draw triangles. So that is what I am talking about when I talk about using simple shapes to make cool designs. Here's another example of triangles, but with the addition of the simple shape of ovals, and in some cases, circles. And this is an example of just triangles and circles. Okay, so what we're going to do is the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to do the contour. So here you see lots of lines, okay? But I want you to focus on doing just the contours of the lines to begin with. So taking your quarter page and your pencil, you're going to think of maybe 2 or 3 simple shapes that you really like, and go ahead and start drawing them now. Don't worry about doing any details. Just get the contour line, which means the outside line, okay? Now, one thing that I'm going to bring up is just because you decide you want your drawing to be either portrait or landscape, it does not mean you cannot turn your paper. In fact, it can be very helpful as you're drawing to turn your paper to help you draw the lines better, okay? So I'm going to turn it throughout the course of the lesson, and I encourage you to do that too. I have to do a little bit of a darker line here so that you can see it on the camera, But I want to encourage you to do a very faint line so that you can erase any lines that you accidentally create, okay? So this technique, I'm sure you've heard of it before. It's called sketching, and I'm gonna slide over and get a black marker so you can actually see what I'm doing. Although I want you to work with pencil for now. Okay. This one I'm gonna do in marker just so you can see I'm doing a nice simple line, okay? And if you haven't already, go ahead and start creating. And maybe if I raise this up a little bit, it would help. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put it on my little perch and do the best I can to draw at this strange angle. All right, that's better. We can see what I'm doing now. Okay, so everyone by now hopefully has started to draw the outside of their simple shapes. Okay, I'm working with triangles and circular shapes, okay? So when you hold your pencil, it can be helpful to hold it down here so that you can move it around with a lot of what we call dexterity, okay? You have more control over your pencil if you hold it down here. And this can help you draw with, with a continuous motion. Okay, it's a lot of fine motor skills to do that, but that can really help is the way you hold it. You want to grasp it, but you don't want to clench your hand when you do that. You want to relax your hand and just draw a nice, simple, light line. Once you got all your lines down and you really like the way they look, and you don't feel like you need to erase anything and try again, which would be completely fine if you did. But once you got those lines down, the contour lines, which means just the outside, once you got those down, then you can go back and you can draw a little bit darker just to make those lines show up a little bit better, okay? So that's moving from sketching to actually, drawing. And we're just focusing on the contour for this part of the activity. And then we are going to move on. So here I've got what we call a geometric design motif. Sometimes you'll hear people say motif, which just basically means what what the design is. Okay. This design is considered geometric because it has these geometric shapes. All right. So why don't you keep working for about 2 more minutes on this just to do the simple lines, the contour lines of your simple shape drawing. And anytime that we move on before you're ready to move on, you can always just come back to it later. So please do not feel any pressure to finish in this short amount of time because there is absolutely no pressure. And I do not expect you to do everything by the time we're ready to move on. And that's okay because you can always come back to these lessons and watch the recorded video if you are wanting to after the stream has been complete. All righty, so let's move on in 30 seconds. Okay, now we're going to talk about concentric lines, okay? Concentric lines. I'm going to bring back the image that I had showed as an example of concentric lines, and we're going to look at them and very quickly figure out what concentric means. So here you see, just like I started with a smaller version, I drew the outside or the contour of the simple shapes. Now I'm going to go back and embellish or make more lines and details by taking those shapes and making smaller shapes inside of those those simple contours. Okay, so go ahead and get started on that. I'm going to just continue to sort of talk to you as you do that, and you can feel free to listen and work at the same time. So when you do the concentric designs, you're going to, like I said, you're going to work inside of the simple contours. Things to think about when you are doing this are the space between the lines, okay? The space between the lines, it's important. So you want to try playing with varying the shapes, or the space, excuse me, varying the space. In other words, for some of them, you might leave, you know, like a ½ inch between the contour and the next simple shape, or you may want to try doing some contour or simple shapes inside the contours a little bit closer. Okay, this is something you can play with. And I'm going to, again, put it up on the little pedestal here so that you can see better. So you can do some that are very close to the contour. So there's just a little bit of space there. And you can do some that's farther away. So think about that when you are doing that. Make conscious decisions about what you want to do. And again, you're working with a pencil and you're holding the pencil very gently and pressing very gently at first until you get the design that you like. And then if you like, you can go back and do it a little bit darker so that you can see. Okay, I'm going to do some of these triangles in here. And just go ahead and play with that. Have fun with it. You can't really make a wrong decision. And if you do something that if you make a line that you don't like, that's okay. You are doing it nice and gently, and you can very easily erase those lines with your eraser and try again. And then once you've got something you like and want to stick with, then you can go back and make it darker if you wish. It's kind of fun to draw. Sometimes drawing can be a little intimidating. First thing is like, what are you going to draw? Just like coming up with the idea can be intimidating. And sometimes just getting those, you know, the line to be what you want it to be, trying to match the image in your head with what you can actually do on paper is quite a artistic process. I find it's better to just sort of have fun with it and see what comes out rather than be too attached to a outcome. When you are drawing, it's a very difficult skill actually to bring what's in your mind to the physical world through drawing it with your hands. So you want to realize that taking the pressure off will only make it easier for you to get better and better with time. And that's one of the things that, you know, practice, they say practice makes you better. It's so true. So if at first you don't succeed, try again. As long as you're having fun, you're going to be more inclined to try again over and over. So that's a very important lesson about art making, is to have a wonderful time doing it, kind of turn off the inner critic and just see kind of what flows out of you. All right, I am going to contemplate doing a little bit more. I like the way that design works. That's pretty cool. It's pretty simple. I want to do a little bit more, but I don't want to risk getting too busy. Okay. So as you're drawing, you want to sort of maybe think about, you know, what you want to add and not make it so that it's like too much to look at. In retrospect, when I look back at this, I think, oh yeah, that's kind of busy. So I'm going to make this one a little bit more simplified. I like these arcs here that I did. I like these arcs here, but maybe instead of making all of them concentric, maybe I will do every other one as concentric, or just maybe in here. So as you're drawing, you're going to ask yourself these questions. When is it not, like when do you add more? And then sometimes when you add more, you see, oh, too much. But that's the beauty of sketching with a very light hand, because with that lightness, you can very easily erase any unwanted lines and try again. Okay, so there's my sort of introducing the round element again, which is kind of a repetition of shapes. You see, it's not a full circle, but it is that curved line. So that repetition shows up again, which makes for a very interesting design using patterning. Okay, so here I am going to do some of these concentrically. And I hope you're enjoying this. It's kind of fun. When you do concentric drawing, what's kind of fun about it is the outside shape kind of helps you decide. It kind of dictates the shape of the line inside. So again, it's something that makes drawing be a little bit more free and fun, instead of like having to think too hard about where and what actual lines you're going to do. So just take a minute to finish up this activity. You can always come back to it. And we're going to, in a moment, move on to the next activity that we're going to do on another quarter page field of view. Okay, so just keep going. We're going to stop in about 30 seconds and move on to something that's called follow the line. Follow the line drawing. Okay. All right. Finish up in 10 seconds, please. Okay. Follow the line drawings are also pretty fun, and they can be pretty simple, as in a design such as this. And these are all pretty simple. This is the most simple. This is a little bit more, and then they get more complicated as you move across the different fields of view, right? But they can get also quite complicated. For example, something like this. This is like a continuous line on the inside. Here's another example. That's with a lot of very, very close together lines with some spaces in the middle, which makes it look pretty interesting. And here's one. I like this one. It kind of reminds me of a backbone or vertebrae. Big. All right. So what it is you're taking a line and you're making a line on the outside, such as this, right? And then from there, you are going and you're filling in with multiple lines on the inside, working from the outside in. This one is a good example because you start to see the variance of line, okay? It starts with a lot of space between this line, this first line and the second line. There's, about 1/4 of an inch, and it varies. But as you move, it gets close, they get closer. And here you can see they're really close. They're so close, in fact, that some lines are overlapping, which makes them darker. And it creates this really interesting, cool pattern. Okay, so go ahead and take your quarter field of view. Okay, you're going to decide whether you want to hold it landscape or portrait, and you're going to start by making a simple line. And you kind of want it to come to the outside of your page. Now, it could be the same on one side as the other, which is known as symmetry, or it could be slightly different or even very different on the other side, which is known as asymmetry or asymmetrical. Okay, so you got those two. Symmetry means that if I were to fold this paper in half down the middle, what was on the right side is the same as what's the same on the right side is the same on the left side. So taking a look at this now, is this an asymmetrical or a symmetrical design? If you said asymmetrical, you are exactly right. Good job. Okay, so from here, I'm going to start by just deciding, do I want to start with the lines close together? Do I want to start with them farther apart? I already know I'm just going to follow the outside contour line with lines on the inside. So that part's already kind of decided. So now the way I'm going to make my artistic decisions is by just deciding how much space to give. And this is something you can do pretty fast. And it's kind of nice to just sort of not think about it all that much. You do want to make some artistic choices, but at the same time, the fun is in just doing, okay? All right. The other thing that you can do is vary the size of the line. Or what I mean by the size is I actually am talking about the thickness. That's another design element in line drawing, contour drawing, that makes for an interesting design, is increasing the thickness of the line in some places and keeping a very thin line in others. For example, if I wanted to make this line thicker, I could do so. Now, keeping in mind, when you make the line thicker, it is definitely going to stand out more. So parts of your drawing that you want accentuated or something that's going to really pop or stand out, then you'd want to give it a thicker line just to kind of vary it. And you can play with the various lines that you make thicker. Okay, I'm going to make this side thicker and see what happens. Because after all, this is asymmetrical. It doesn't have to be the same. So I'm going to make that one thicker. Okay, so those are the things you can play with. Once you've got your contour line on the two on the outside, then you can decide how much space to leave in between those lines and then how thick you want those lines to be. Also, if you want to leave areas that are going to be open and empty, you can put those in there now, right? So that you know to leave them empty and open. Because space is also, the use of space is also very important in drawing. So I'm going to leave those open, and I'm going to make those thicker. And then you can just go ahead and continue to make the lines how you see fit over and over again. Okay. Just have fun with it. We're going to take a break right now from this activity because we have one final activity which we need to do before closing. And that is just taking a moment to observe and be mindful about what you just created. So everyone, please put your things down and take a deep breath through your nose, and you can breathe out your mouth. And you want to sit up tall in your chair. Okay, and you want to take a look at what you've created today. And you want to just you want to look and admire, appreciate what you've done. Perhaps you have some ideas about what you could do better next time. And then just take a moment to appreciate, and maybe you could think of one thing that you really liked about the activity and share it with a trusted adult later. And also just really thank yourself for coming into this space and being in a creative, allowing your creative juices to flow. I have three more lessons that will follow. And next time we will talk about shading. So keep creating. There are these two designs that you've got. And if you wanted to do any more creating, you could do a combination of these two, and you could even perhaps change the scale to make it even larger by using a bigger piece of paper. All right, thanks so much. I appreciate you being here. Have fun creating, and see you next time.